Welcome to session 7 of our Marriage for Life study. I've really enjoyed these last few weeks spending time together digging into God's Word and what it means for our marriages. Now, I apologize this week I don't have my much more beautiful sidekick for this session, so you'll have to stick with me. I hope you spent some time this last week talking about your roles and have some more definition for those roles in your home. They're critical for the structure that you need to be the best family unit that you can be, and to give you and your spouse and your kids a firm foundation for spiritual growth. Today, we're going to talk about parenting and the most effective traits of great parents. As a parent of young children myself, I can't say that Natalie and I excel in all of these areas, but I understand more than ever that each of these traits can transform your parenting, fill your children's hearts and minds with God's truth, bringing wisdom into your home. And if you're watching this and you're in this marriage study and you don't have kids, these traits are the perfect foundation to set up a godly home so that whoever enters will see your example and want to follow it. The first and foremost is showing God's love. John the Apostle tells us that we learn love by looking at the love that God has shown for us. God's love came first, and it's truly a sacrificial love. In this love, it says this, in this is love. Not that we have loved God, but that he loved us. And he sent his son to be a propitiation for our sins. That's 1 John 4:10. Do you know what you love? Do you look at the people, the activities, and the things that you're attached to? Look at the sacrifices you make to those people. Do those activities, or those things that you do, these are the areas of your life that you love. And children can see where your priorities are, where your love is directed. The people who come into your home will notice what you truly love. God's love helps parents and marriages counteract our natural selfishness. His love reveals itself in his commitment to us and his sacrifice for us. And long after our emotions have faded away, God's love is there. And children learn God's love through the sacrificial commitments we make to them and teach them to make. The second trait is something that we've covered several times in this study, and it's respect. The Apostle Paul writes that we should think like Christ and treat others as more important than ourselves in Philippians 2. Respect recognizes the best in people. It's more than acknowledging a child's accomplishments and patting them on the head. Children and teens are worthy of respect. Why? Because God created them, and he loves them, and he gave them to you and in your home. Respect teaches us not to treat others as unimportant, but to treat them as the image of God is in them. Nothing hurts a child more than being treated as if he is useless, and almost nothing encourages him more than being respected and valued as a person that God created and loves. One way to show respect to your family is to watch what you do with your lips, what you say, your language. You refuse to use harsh or cruel language, whether directed toward family members, in your home or outsiders out of your home. The way you speak conveys how you feel. So watch your language. Our language habits really do influence our ability to model respect to our children. The next trait is intentionality. Being intentional means talking about and living out your biblical core values and priorities before allowing other influences into our home. This trait nurtures a consistency in family life that reinforces the other traits. When parents are intentional, they grow in wisdom and are able to keep their focus on how they act as believing parents. That's Colossians 1. It is easy to be passive and let media and other influences set our family priorities for us, but it's more effective if we pay careful attention to how we live our lives. This is intentionality. Making decisions as parents about how we will own the spiritual atmosphere in our homes. Making a decision on purpose to guard that nexus and nucleus of our homes. Next is setting healthy boundaries and limits. Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend, authors of the Boundaries book series, write that the purpose of boundaries in parenting is to let good things in and keep the bad things out. Hebrews 12:1 says that in order to run our race well, we need to shake off the things that keep us from reaching our goal. So ordering our home with healthy boundaries for kids and adults helps us do that. Being deliberate about boundaries for media, for behavior, for relationships, and godly living and a vibrant faith means we do not let culture determine what is healthy for our family. Proverbs tells us to leave the presence of a fool, for there you do not meet words of knowledge. That's Proverbs 14:7. If we don't set our own boundaries in our families, other influences, culture, extended family, trends, friends, whoever else, will set our children's moral boundaries instead of us. We might be surprised, even dismayed, by what they've learned out there. Another great trait is having gratitude. As Paul begins his letter to the Philippians, he tells them how thankful he is every time he thinks of them. That's in chapter 1, verses 3 through 4. Gratitude is not just giving a polite reaction to something good. It is a cultivated habit and a vital part of healthy relationships. When we practice gratitude in our families, it helps children and parents fight selfishness, which causes division among families and friends. When gratitude is expressed on a regular basis and in deliberate ways, it helps our children learn to see all the good God does in our lives. And he does, because he is a good God. Every day, you can find something to be thankful for. A natural outcome of this is that we learn to naturally praise him, regardless of how we feel in the moment. Next, parents need to be willing to model forgiveness and grace to their children, regardless of the personal cost. Human nature prevents us from easily giving grace and forgiveness, yet we learn from God's word that we need to give both, or we can't expect to be forgiven. That's Matthew 6. I know that you're thinking that these traits seem very, very saintly, especially during our current struggles and in today's time with all the challenges that come with it. But at the end of the day, all of these traits are great parenting, and because it makes us rely on God's wisdom for direction, for not only recognizing our mistakes, but also correcting them. In parenting, it's no different. God's way of teaching us life is through the abundant life that he offers in Jesus. And we want to teach that life to our kids. Learning how to live out these traits in our parenting gives our children a model for living out his abundant life. If you want to dive deeper and take a deeper look at this parenting, we've got a Parenting for Life study right after this study. I want to encourage you to contact our connecting coordinator, Megan, if you're interested in leading one of those or being part of one of those studies and programs. Today, as we break up into our small groups, I want you to consider how you can improve in each of these areas to set an atmosphere in your home where you'll see that real life being lived out. And then I want you to plan to make some specific commitments on how you need to change to be the best parent you can be, and to create the best home environment no matter who comes in, kids, visitors, parents, friends, or who else. For homework this week, not only do I want you to continue talking about how to be great parents, but also focus on the Life Starters journaling. I also want you to read ahead to session number 8. We're going to be doing some very important exercises in the next 2 weeks as we create family values and mission statements. A family mission statement is a starting point in the unfolding map of your family's journey. Not only does it create the basis for family interaction and a goal to which every family member can contribute, but most importantly, it establishes a framework for family direction and decisions. I know you know other parents who probably need this kind of teaching, or marriages who could use this kind of teaching to set up a good godly home. I want you to invite them to join you, share some of what you've learned, hear some of the verses that you're digging into in the Life Starters journaling. Share it with them, because we want to take this truth to people who so desperately need it. If you have any feedback, email our connecting coordinator, Megan Bennett, at mbennett@perbap.org. Let me pray for you. God, I pray for every couple, every home and family represented here. I pray that you would help them to be intentional as they set up godly homes that will nurture kids and all who enter, that they will know surely God was in this place. Be with them now in Jesus' name.
All right. Well, what I'm going to do in order to keep the video rolling for Sarah is, rather than put you in a group, I'm gonna step out for the next 20 minutes and let you three teach each other about how to be great parents. Just go through that list on page 37 and 38 and talk about what you're good at, what you're not so good at, where you can make some changes. Um, Again, you know me, I'm all about challenging people to make some radical shifts in the areas that they need to in order to make change. Otherwise, you know what happens, we get a little bit better and then we just go right back into our comfort zone. And as far as I'm concerned, comfort zone is the death zone of relationships because we just get selfish. Comfort, and selfish ought to be synonymous in the dictionary because that's really what we're saying to whomever, whether it be our kids or our spouses. We'd rather be comfortable than to be in a better relationship with God. Because think about your relationship with God. If you're going to improve upon that relationship, you're going to have to do something that's going to be a little more uncomfortable. And you guys all have adopted kids, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty radical, right? So you did something really radical in order to create a relationship for a kid that wouldn't have it. So I don't have to teach you guys about radical. You're already doing it. So now it's just a matter of turning towards the things that aren't as radical, like each other, right? And what can you do to do that better, to do life better, and to do all those things? When I look at all of those traits of good parenting, man, I wish I had a chance to do it over with my kids because I wasn't there always. I didn't respect, I didn't love them, I wasn't intentional. All those things I could have improved upon. So anyway, so I'm going to give you guys some time to just talk amongst yourselves, but you are on video for Sarah and Sean, and I'll just come back in about 20 minutes and we can wrap up with some takeaways. Is that good?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just going to mute my.
Parenting, isn't it?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, that was what he's talking about.
All right.
Intentional.
Love, respect, intentionality, limits.
Sorry, we're just pulling up the guide on our phone.
Okay.
Okay.
What are the questions?
Yeah, it basically says to go through and kind of, I guess, rate yourselves on the traits of effective parenting, which is the first one's love, respect, intentionality, boundaries and limits, gratitude, grace and forgiveness,
Yeah.
and adaptability.
Yeah, just talking about how you can improve in each area or specific commitment.
Yeah. I mean, love's a big one. Specifically, we all know each other really well here, and we've all reached out and and adopted, and I think that speaks volume for love. I know specifically as a guy, you guys could be along the same lines, don't always express it correctly or well. Like, I tried to break the pattern of, from the way I was brought up. I know my father loved me, but I can honestly tell you, I don't recall him ever saying it, ever. And I never said it to him. That's just something guys didn't do. Even like I hear Gina on the phone with her brother, and every time they hang up, it's like, love you, I love you too. I mean, I have 3 sisters. I don't even say it to my sisters. It's just, and I wish I did specifically say it to my dad. But I always had a hard time. Even the last time I saw him alive, I remember thinking about it like I should do it. I didn't. But I try to make up for it now. And I mean, I must tell the boys 20, 30 times a day. because I don't want them to ever, not that I question it, but I just don't want them to ever have that gap.
Right. That's a really important point. I was gonna say, sometimes we hear Henry telling Aubrey, love you,
Yeah.
Aw,
before like either he's leaving or we leave. So
that's so sweet.
I guess you're doing a good job modeling that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Arnie. I say it. I want to say I'm not up to 30 times a day, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
But I had growing up, I was opposite. My dad and I, we had a relationship. Now, when I was a kid, my dad worked late and stuff like that, so he could still be working and I'd be going to bed, and or he'd be doing whatever. But he said I love you, but not as much as my mom.
Yeah, he's not as
But
demonstrative.
but he says it, and he says it, and whenever I say it to him first, he'll say it right back to me real quick. So, and Henry, I could tell him that I love him, and he might ask, he can say it back to me tomorrow, or sometimes before I like go to bed, and I'll say it, and he doesn't say it all the time, going back, but he says it.
The unsolicited ones are awesome.
Yeah,
Like if we're just sitting there or whatever, and Ryder or Avery will just come up
Yes.
and they're just out of nowhere, they're like, love you. And it's just like, oh.
yeah. Yesterday, Arnie was working out in the garage, so I had the twins out front. We were on the sidewalk, and they were both riding their scooters, and I was standing in the middle, and I drew a stop sign by our mailbox to the left, and then by our neighbor's mailbox all the way down to the right. So they have this like zone with two stop signs, and they're really good about respecting it. And so I stand right in the middle. And at one point, Avery comes back through. He gets to me. He puts his scooter down, takes off his helmet, comes over, gives me a hug, and he goes, "I love you, mommy." Then puts his helmet back on, gets back on the scooter, and goes on. And I just stood there like, what just happened?
That's awesome.
Sweetest thing. I was literally just standing there watching them. I wasn't even talking. And it was just like, you could tell he felt it, and something jogged
Yeah.
his mind in that moment to say that. I don't know what it was, but it was the sweetest thing. Like, it just gave me chills. But yeah, I think love's a big thing here. I mean, if I just don't want our kids to ever doubt that, you know, like, not that I ever did, but like, we just like go above and beyond to be expressive about it. Because in my family, love was shown, but it was like the opposite stuff. Like, people didn't deal with disagreements. They would just like sweep things under the rug and move on. And like, I don't want them to grow up in a family that you can't express any emotion. Like, we should be able to express all emotions, from love to anger to sadness.
That's our household.
We
right
got a
now.
whole range.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Let it flow, you know?
Barry.
Oh,
Our kids, our
Oh,
kids
go ahead.
are sick.
No. I was raised in a bit of a similar way, and it was more like a little bit of the children should be seen and not heard kind of mentality. And so if I ever was upset about something, I needed to keep that to myself. And I better not look too sour about it either. So I think that's been a big part of my parenting. Like, even if my rule is going to be the same, I still like, if you want to tell me how you feel about it in a respectful way, you can do that. And I always try to make space for that. I also don't want our kids to feel like they have to hide things from us.
right.
I do still find candy wrappers under beds sometimes, so they're hiding some things. But
Sometimes then they'll tell you. That's the best. Like, they do something and then they tell you about it.
Yep. That's Ryder. He always tells me so.
Yeah, but I was kind of saying that you, Arnie, in that, like, when I was growing up, like, you know, I never heard that from my parents. And it's funny because now that I'm older, now my mother and father say to me all the time that it's something I have to get used to, you know, because of that growing up. So it's always still weird, you know, to hear it. But it's something that we definitely try to do it all the time. Like, yeah, always say that to Henry and Melissa. Alyssa's better about saying, I love you, just randomly. Henry
does
does
sometimes.
sometimes. But
Now your parents are like, I love you. You're like, what's wrong? Are you guys okay?
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. That's my first thought. Something's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I got it from my mother all the time. I was the typical mama's boy. I was tied to my mother's hip, pretty much until I moved out of the house. And I honestly didn't get too close to my dad until after my mother passed away. That really brought us together. So that's a good thing that came of it. It was to the point where I remember like, what am I going to talk to this guy about? You know, because I used to call my mom like every other day, and now I couldn't call her anymore. And now I had to call. I felt like I had to call dad to just check up on him. And I remember the first few times I'd call him, like, it was such a struggle because it's like, how you doing? Good, good, good. That used to be the end of our conversations. He'd be like, here's your mother, you know, but then it was like, man, I have some time to kill. So it was always pretty rough.
But then you started golfing together
Yep.
and drinking beer, and then it was fine.
Yep.
Golf and beer.
Yeah.
Then I guess the next one there, respect. This actually makes me think what Leah, what you said, you know, children should be seen and not heard. I guess the way I was brought up for the most part. And it was just like, do as I say, just not as I do. Just, you know, just, I'm going to tell you what to do and I want you to do it no matter what. So
Yeah.
I think now Gina's helped me out a lot because that's what I always knew. But you know, after being with Gina for so long and, you know, her showing me other ways, it's so much better because you don't, you know, you want your kids to, you know, you don't want to be your kid's best friend, but you want to have their respect. And to have their respect, in my opinion, you have to give them a respect. You know, they're human beings. They're just little tiny humans, but they're still human beings. And, you know, they don't have to have, like, for dinner is a perfect example. It's like, you know, we're not sitting there like, you need to eat everything on that plate, no matter what. I don't care if you like it or not, whatever, you know?
Try
Like,
it.
yeah, it's like, okay, try
Yeah.
it. I know you don't like it, not your favorite food.
Yeah.
Just have a couple of bites. You know, you just kind of,
Yeah.
you know, have a little bit of give and take there.
Right. It's all about give and take. And in my house, it was like, my dad was like, you don't eat meatloaf now, it's your breakfast.
Yeah.
And he made me eat it one day for breakfast. And I love my dad dearly, but I puked. I literally, the texture of meatloaf, I just cannot, I don't like hamburgers. It's texture. And my mom was like, do you now see that she does not like meatloaf? Like, let her eat, like I would eat like 10 helpings of broccoli, but don't get me to eat meatloaf or hamburgers, anything that's ground up like that. I just can't do it. And now with my kids, I'm like, I'm not forcing them to eat stuff. Like with new foods, especially, we'll say like 2-bite club, take 2 bites. And if you still don't like it, move on to something else. And they respond pretty well to that. You know, they don't get any other snacks if they don't finish their dinner. And we generally will save it and try like after their shower to see if they'll eat a little more, but then it gets thrown away after that. I mean, we don't save it to the next day.
No.
Like my father used to do. Like, and it like fosters eating problems too, if you're forcing people to eat.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of a tangent, but what do you guys think about that one for respect?
Well, I just think, like, I see when you give that respect, the behavior is just astronomically better, right? Because they see that they, you know, their feelings, their actions, they're validated, right? And they really truly are more likely to comply, right? When they're respected, right?
Yeah. I agree. Definitely. It's modeling. And when parents are like, children should be seen and not heard, like they're not even in the same room as their parents. They don't even know what's being modeled. And like, you know, fortunately years ago, I think a lot of time kids were maybe outside more, which was a good thing, but they were also outside doing things that weren't being monitored and like modeled and taught. Like kids need teaching. They don't just need like wandering, you know.
Right.
So
The balance.
yeah, so what does it say on there? No, I was just reading more about respect. Watching, he talks about watching your language. I don't feel like anyone in this group has a problem with
No.
Eh,
It comes out every once in a while.
Yeah.
If I if
Being honest.
I'm fixing something, the kids have to be somewhere else. I'm like the dad in A Christmas Story, fixing the furnace, fighting the furnace. When I'm fixing something, sometimes
Yeah, but I think in general, right, you speak respectfully of others. Like, I think,
Yeah.
Yeah, occasional things might slip out, but I think that, I think
and also
respectful group.
and the part of it that stuck out to me was how you speak about other people. Like you don't speak disrespectfully about, oh, did you hear about so and so, and like speaking disrespectfully about them, because then it teaches your kids how to view other people and to be disrespectful about them.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is so true.
That's something Gina made me realize a while ago, probably 2 years ago, because like I've just never liked my job. I mean, unless I work for myself, I'm probably never going to love my job. And and I was just, coming home, and it's just like, for an hour, I would just, how was your day? That was the worst thing to ask me, because I'll let you know how my day was, and I just rehash everything. And after a while, either you said something or I realized it on my own. But either way, I was like, you know what? I need to just leave it at, keep it from coming in the house. Just I don't need to be so negative. They don't need to be, the kids of the dad that's always grumbling about how much he hates his job or whatever. You want to see respect. It goes not just people but things. I look at it as, okay, my job allows, it pays for the house, it pays for us to do stuff. We've got to be thankful and respectful for it.
Yeah.
Instead of just grumbling about it.
Yeah, at least we have jobs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some people don't.
Yep. I guess kind of what Gina said a little bit with the whole outside influences. The next one, intentionality. It says intent. I guess it's intentionally talking to your kids about your values and everything, because if you're not doing it, they're going to get it from somewhere else.
Yep.
I mean, our kids, they go to the preschool here 3 days a week now.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, like Ryder or Avery will say something, and it's nothing horrible, but I'm just like, where did they get that from? It's like they hang out with 3 people during the week. It's either me, Gina, or me, Gina.
Who is this person?
Our babysitter Lindsay, or my sister Connie. That's pretty much all they hang out with. It's like, so where'd they get this?
No, I figured it out. He was doing it. Sorry. No.
And I just remember some of my family members are like, die hard, very, very super religious people. And I remember they would go through my cousins' like music selections and go through the movies they were allowed to watch. And I just remember thinking, like, really? Come on, they can't watch The Great Outdoors with me. It's PG-13, for God's sake. But they were going through and making sure that nothing inappropriate was getting to their kids, so they could buffer it and make sure only the correct what they wanted to get through to their kids got through.
We've definitely stopped movies or stopped letting them watch certain shows that they found just because we didn't care for the language or the content. I mean, I try not to be too controlling of that, but also being aware of what they're watching and absorbing.
John Candy's not allowed anymore, so it'd be a little
But
different.
then Henry was also singing, what was the, Gina, I think that was with you.
Yeah, noodle.
No. 1 tequila, 2 tequila.
Margarita.
Or 1 margarita.
One margarita by Rich.
That was awesome.
Henry sang that all summer long.
Well, I had a wake up call because I put country music on in the car a lot. And so when, like sometimes you just don't notice it because they're like nice songs, but they're Body Like a Back Road one. Henry was singing the words and I was like, oh, I can gotta go to the Christian station.
In his room for a while.
But you know what though? The music we grew up with is just as bad
Oh, yeah.
Or worse.
Or worse,
or
yeah.
worse, and it's like we didn't know any of that.
And there's like a balance with this because like and on the movies front or TV, like my parents let me watch whatever I wanted, and that was not good. There are things I wish I had not seen as a kid. But Leah's parents didn't let her watch literally anything. So
Like Little Mermaid was not allowed.
like Little Mermaid was too much. Like nothing. So I think
I watched anything I want. I watched Police Academy. I was in first grade.
yeah, I remember the first time I was probably like 9 when I saw The Exorcist, and that was I was terrified. I found it
Yeah,
on
that's
TV.
too much.
And that's not, it's just not, I don't want the kids doing that. But I think there's a balance of where like, you know, there's you definitely want to restrict like things that are going to be harmful or teach them bad things. But, you know, we're not like super.
But I've definitely stopped stuff that maybe other parents might let their kids watch because I think the kids are disrespectful or, you know, just attitudes I don't want my kids to pick up.
Yeah.
And like TV shows today are totally different than what we grew up with.
Well, like we were talking about this, like TV shows when we grew up, there was always like a moral and a message to it. There was like a central theme that it would come to a head, and then the kid would like learn a lesson, or there was something.
And there was no foul language in them, nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that. I mean, it's like SpongeBob SquarePants.
Oh, yeah.
My niece loves that show. She loved it when she was a kid growing up and everything. And
Because her father loved it and he let it on.
I just remember watching
That's
it
why.
once, and I was just like, "What is this?"
Never seen a whole show of it.
My
Yeah,
kids love it. Both of them love it.
I was just like, "What?"
Yeah, we can't stand it.
But I think what Keisha said earlier is good. It's like it's not just plopping your kids in front of the TV. It's being aware of what they're watching too.
Yeah.
You know, because you know we know people who it's like the TV's their kid's babysitter for hours and on end. And you know you don't know what can come up, and even commercials.
The commercials too.
Like the
Yeah.
commercials that come on, and it's just like, you know, so we try to limit the TV to specific things, you know, some very
PBS Kids.
yeah, almost anything on PBS Kids and a couple things on Nickelodeon, but Nickelodeon, it's like you get all the commercials.
It's just, yeah.
And all Ariel sit there, he's like, I want that.
I want that toy. I want that game.
that."
Mommy, I want that. And I'm like, DVR. I'm like, we're skipping this.
Well, like DVR or Netflix or Prime because
We've been
They
watching
skip the
basketball.
commercials.
We've been watching basketball for the past week, and the kids are enjoying it, but they're enjoying the commercials just as much as the game.
Right.
Because there's like my kids saw a commercial with a horse about a Bronco, and they see the horse, and then Aubrey's like, "Oh, is that Spirit?"
Aww.
Then Henry's like, "No." So that's off. Hey, this is a good horse.
You're at the horse.
Boundaries.
Boundaries is the next one.
Boundaries and limits. I'm just trying to read the paragraph, and it's not really making much sense to me.
boundaries and limits. I think we could have a whole session on boundaries.
Yeah, for real.
I mean, boundaries and limits. I mean, there's a limit to everything. You know, especially with our kids, they really want to like one more, one more minute, one more show, one more hour, or whatever. And what I've found that really works is at least for Ryder, because Avery, he's pretty compliant, but with Ryder, he's set an alarm. It could be 30 seconds. It doesn't matter.
The timer.
He just wants to hear that timer, and then it's like, okay, no more. Timer went off. Now
Yeah,
it's
he
time
does
to
best
move
with
on.
warnings because he likes time to process that whatever he's doing is ending, and then he'll move on without problem to the next thing. But he really likes that buffer.
That's something that you guys should all do with each other too, by the way. I used to hate it when my wife.
I've tried that, but that just gets me in trouble. I'm like, ding, can't talk anymore.
That's not the context he's using it in.
Not that way. I mean, hey, we're gonna leave in 5 minutes, or we're gonna have dinner in 5 minutes, or whatever. Instead of dinner's ready, stop what
Right.
you're doing, get here now.
I mean, it really just shows respect.
It is. It's,
Just to tell someone, stop it right now, is a little bit egocentric.
yeah.
Like, what I'm asking you to do is more important to stop what you're doing now. I mean, we've had that talk so many times. Like, I'll be like, Arnie, can you get this for me? And he's like, does it have to be right now? I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And then he's like, you want me to stop what I'm doing for what you want? Yes. And then it's like, really?
Or I think back to the respect thing too. How many of you guys will yell for each other through the house?
All the time.
Right? Totally disrespectful.
We totally
Yeah,
do that.
And then when your kids do it, it's so annoying.
Yeah.
And you realize,
We do it. Yeah.
you know, and it used to drive me nuts. Somebody, kid, wife, somebody would scream, I'd get up, go to them, and they, oh, never mind, or I got it, or I'm like, well, why do you come to me?
Yell through the house for me.
You know, so it really is. I mean, we can joke about it, but it really shows respect to get up
We do it.
and go to somebody, and then you guys were touching on respect with the kids. I find that it's like, what is that saying? It's like what your poor planning doesn't make for my, chaos or whatever.
Lack of planning on your part does not necessitate an emergency on mine.
Right, and that's what you're telling kids when you don't give them any warning. It's like, I didn't plan, so you can't have any space. But the same thing with when it comes to respect. I found that if I get down on my knees and I grab the kid, not roughly, but touch the face and talk to them, it changes everything. And then when I say, now tell me what I said, again, changes everything. But it takes, what does that take? Time on my part, calm on my part, getting down on my knees. But man, when I would do that kind of thing, I do it with my grandkids. The beauty of having grandkids is you get to do it all over, and you got a nice little window of time to be perfect, and then you can leave.
I was gonna say, you get to leave.
But I tell you, I now I get to practice all this stuff on what I didn't do with my kids. But what a difference! My one grandson, he did he wouldn't eat. I was going to make him throw up like you. He wouldn't eat at dinner, and he was my son said, don't even try to make him eat. He won't eat. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to eat for Pops. And sure enough, he didn't eat. And he was only, maybe three, just three, if that. So I said, if you don't eat, Kellen, I'm going to take you to bed right now. And there's not going to be 1, 2, 3. There's not going to be a warning. You don't eat, we're going to bed. And he like defiantly, like just did this. So I picked him up. Not roughly. I wasn't angry. I put him in bed, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, you didn't eat. I told you I was going to put you to bed. It's 7 o'clock or whatever, 6 o'clock, and now you got to go to bed. And he said, no, I'll eat. I said, no, you missed the chance. Anyway, I sat there for an hour and a half while he cried, but I sat there with him, and I just kept explaining to him, I love you, Kellen. You're the best, but we're not getting out of bed because you didn't eat. You made a choice. This isn't Pop's decision. This is your decision. I talked to him like he was an adult for an hour and a half, which was painstaking for me. But granted, this is a 3-year-old. A whole month later, I go to babysit again. First thing out of his mouth was, Pops, I'm eating tonight.
Nice.
And my son looks at me like, how do you get him to do that? I'm like, because I took the time to deal with it, which again, I know most parents don't have that kind of time, but that's the respect thing for me with everybody, with any relationship. Like if we want to take more time, the relationship's going to be better. And I think that if there was one thing I could do over, it would have been not to be so rushed. There was nothing more busy or nothing more important than my kids. That's what we say. But then we have a schedule filled and we're telling them nothing's more important than you except we got to get to soccer practice, or nothing's more important than you, but, we got to hurry up and get to the store or whatever. It's just, we're always in such a mad rush, and there's no respect in busyness. So that's my one big takeaway. When I look at all these, the one thing that was really sorely lacking was that kind of time respect. And then just sitting there, and it's amazing how kids kind of self-correct when they know because in some ways they're getting you to react because that's the attention that they get as well, right?
Yeah.
Tell them the psychology. Gina, teach us, Gina.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it maintains behavior too, even if that's not the initial intent. It's the secondary reinforcement that's often more powerful.
Yeah.
Sometimes kids just aren't hungry. I mean, there are, like my pediatrician tells us, kids are really good at regulating their hunger, better than adults. They will eat when they're hungry. They will not when they're not. And so that's kind of why I've just taught in our house, like they're allowed to make that choice, but they won't get anything else to eat. There's no snacks.
And it's
There's
really,
no dessert.
really important for everything you all do is to make sure you're on the same page and do it consistently. And
Yeah.
One thing, I would do that when my kids were little, and then my wife would sneak them a banana, you know,
Yeah.
because she thought they were going to die if they didn't eat, you know. And
Yeah.
so just making sure that it both like, hey, wait until daddy gets home, like then you're going to get it, like don't do that. And you know, and like I used to be, I want to be their buddy, so I'd be like, don't tell mom, but we're going to do this, you know. And all that stuff is just so detrimental, you know.
Yeah.
And we all, I mean, I did it, you guys probably don't, but it was really bad. And I used to do that stuff all the time, like, or my son, even when he was really little, mom's going to be so mad. One time I got angry at him, and I shouldn't admit this, but it's the statute of limitations are up. I threw him on the bed, and he was like 2 because he was crying and kicking me. I threw him on the bed too hard, and he bounced across the bed and went off the other side. And he came up, and he had really big eyes. It was like a cartoon, big eyes like this. And he comes up, and his lips quiver, and he goes, "I'm telling mom." Like, no, I'll bring you some food, you know. Anyway, so all these things are great, but it's what you all decide you're going to do and do it together, have a united front. I think that's the most crucial of all these things. Slowing down a little bit, making some changes. I mean, we were big on media when my kids came up, you know, and we were the odd ones, even in the Christian circles. We were the odd ones. Like, what do you mean your kids can't watch that? Because the parents of the other families would get mad when my kids said, "Oh, we're not allowed to watch that." Even the Christian parents would go, "Oh, like, why can't you watch that? There's nothing wrong with that. We let them watch it," you know. So holding that standard, I think, is, you know, just short of legalistic, but still pretty smart in order, because the world's getting crazier and crazier, you know. We're talking about like movies like Titanic, you know, when my kids were just coming up and they were like maybe early teenagers or whatever. We're like, we don't want you watching that. And nobody could understand. No other, like, why can't they watch that? You know? So anyway. So out of all those things, what do you think one quick takeaway is the area where you could have the most improvement in your home?
I mean, we didn't really get to this one, but I think it's on there. After boundaries, isn't forgiveness on there?
Yeah, grace and forgiveness.
Yeah, to me, that's just so important because we all make mistakes. And I think if you can model to your kids, like, I think it was yesterday, I yelled at Avery for something and I felt bad about it afterwards because I don't usually yell to that effect. And I actually got down on his level, looked him right in the eye, and I said, "Mommy wanted to apologize. I lost my temper. I was very upset and I shouldn't have yelled like that." Because I normally don't yell. I don't want them to yell, you know? And so I think just acknowledging your mistakes and, you know, saying to your children when like you've done something that you don't allow them to do, I think it makes you have more credibility.
Right.
And he was like, "It's okay, Mommy." And he gave me a hug. Like, it was fine, but it was just taking that time, you know, was
and
important.
actually saying not saying I'm sorry, but saying, will you forgive me?
Yes.
I
So
mean,
it's on the other person.
huge shift between I'm sorry, because I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Everything you're sorry, but that doesn't mean anything, you know. But
True.
and then I ask kids, and I do it with my grandkids, like, tell me what you did wrong. Explain to me what you did wrong and why it was wrong, and what you're going to do in the future. You know, again, one more step, man, it really makes them. It's like what I challenge CJ, you know, praying over your wife. That when the words come out, there's learning to be had. There's, you know, things move, things shift. When you just say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, we all do it. I say, I'm sorry. And sometimes I don't even know what I'm sorry for. I'm just trying to get past it, you know,
Right.
whatever it is. So, yeah, that's a big one. What about anybody else out of that list? Anything jump out at you as far as something that needs improvement?
We didn't get this in the discussion, but I think for Lee and I to be on the same page with boundaries, because sometimes we're on a different page with boundaries. So it's something we try to be on the same page about, but we need to do a better job of being on the same page.
Yeah, talking more about it. Just every time there's a conflict, you know, just talk it through together on how it could have been handled different, how it could have been communicated better, you know, and are you meeting your kids where they're at and actually using all the opportunity you can to teach, or is it just punishment? You know, like there's that difference between correction and punishment, and a lot of times we react and punish when it was a great opportunity to correct. I mean, it's just really slight semantics, but huge difference in the psyche of the kid when they know that it's safe to make a mistake and get corrected versus they're going to get punished and then, you know, feel stupid for something that maybe is, you know. And the other thing I don't think parents, especially in this generation, do is they don't let natural consequences happen. They make up for their kids, like, let stuff happen, right? Hey, the police are coming, you know, or, you know, something's going to happen and you're going to deal with it. I'm not going to cover for this. You're going to have to call that teacher, or you're going to have to call that parent of that friend where you did that. And I want you to talk it through, you know. It's the worst thing. And then, you know, not only do we make up for them, but we cover for them. And then they know that they can get away with stuff. So natural consequences, I think, are great opportunity.
Yeah, they're the most effective. It's the most effective. I mean, other than positive reinforcement, a natural consequence is the best kind, because it has to make sense. Otherwise, it's like, what's the point? You're just teaching kids fear.
Yeah.
It's also better when the consequences are small. Like now the consequences are a lot smaller than they would be for a similar kind of mistake in 20 years.
Right.
And even like manners, I was shy as a kid, and I still have trouble looking people in the eye and, you know, like really shaking somebody's hand and being really connected. But my kids were really shy. And when my son got to be about 10, it really became obvious. But then it seemed disrespectful. You know, it like at that age, it starts to become something. So I told him, I said, I'm going to make you start shaking people's hands. I want you to say your name. I want you to say Mr. or Mrs. I really want you to engage them. And, oh, Dad, I'm shy. Then now he's saying he's shy because for years I said, oh, he's shy. Don't worry about him. Don't. And so then I told him that. And then the first time he did it, I said, okay, Chris, that was an opportunity. Come over here. I want you to shake Dr. Arndt's hand. I want you to look him in the eye, and I want you to say your name's Chris Miserak. And he's like, Dad, you're kidding me. I'm like, no, I'm not. One time I embarrassed him. And from that point on, it was like he was a salesman. Hi, my name's Chris. Glad to meet you. You know? So it's amazing, you know, you could think your kid's shy, but in fact, they better get over that at a certain age, or it just comes out as flat out disrespectful. So what about you, CJ and Keisha? Anything jump out at you?
We didn't get to it, but I think probably adaptability. And I say that we have two very different children. And so I think there's a lot of, you know, flexibility in how we I mean, there's some consistencies, but they also need to be parented a little bit differently. And I think I'm pretty flexible and go with the flow, but he's more black and white and needs kind of rules, right? So I think just between the two of us, that adaptability and being able to be consistent with that.
And I think trying to recap a corrective measure together, I mean, it sounds like so much it is, but even sitting down with the child again together and say, mommy handled this, and I didn't handle it right, or daddy didn't handle it right. And we want to talk about how we could have handled it better, but be a united front, because then the child is seeing, oh, it's not mommy alone. It's actually mommy and daddy together, even when you do it wrong, or when there's more to be said, because I'm big on giving myself space, because when I react, it's never pretty when I react in the moment. So part of my spanking routine, which really got limited, was sending them to their room for 30 minutes. And this is when they were old enough to have the emotional pain of, oh no, it's coming. And I would say, okay, go to your room for 30 minutes, think about what you did, and then I'm coming up to spank you, because that offense was a spankable offense. And man, two things would happen. One, they would be torn up for 30 minutes, and I would not want to spank them because I didn't have anything left in me. So, but I would go up and I would talk it through with them, and then I'd say, okay, now I'm going to have to spank you. It was so awkward, but I could count on one hand how many times I spanked my kids after that process started. It just, it eliminated the need for that kind of punishment, where I used to just fly off the handle and smack them, real quick. So, but it's all about that break and then the communication around the punishment. I think it's critical, and we just don't we don't take the time, and we don't pull back together as couples and then take the time to reiterate again that opportunity, that teaching opportunity. So those are the two tips. It's that respect. For me, it all comes back to respect and time. Are we going to take the time? And you're right, Keisha, there's no two kids that are, I don't think any person sitting here learned the same way. And yet a lot of times we're parented and we're coached and we're led by a corporate leader the same way, and everybody expects the same results. And that's like almost the definition of insanity. You're not going to get the same results. And I think that's why it's so important to really get to know your kid and what motivates him, and then even talk to the other child, because the hard part is you get a compliant child who almost gets ignored. It's like, and then the prodigal is the one that gets all the attention, and the other one sitting over here getting bitter because they're doing all the right things, right? So being able to have that conversation, because I tell you what, I always thought kids were too little to really understand adult conversations until I just started doing it. They get it. Like, they get it. Just to be, especially that one that's pliable and compliant, to be told you are very compliant. You don't need the same kind of treatment that Bobby needs. And, but it's not that we don't love Bobby anymore or you any less, but it's just, we have to deal with you all differently. I mean, you think they're not going to get it, but they really do.
It's really a lesson in equity and the difference from equity and equality, because it's, not everyone has the same needs. So not everyone should have the same interventions or the same attention or the same level of, people need different things, and that's just life,
What Arnie said too, as I'm saying it, I'm reminding myself, what a lesson too, to not talk about the other kid. Like we might whine about our job, but we also talk about one another within our family sometimes in a negative light. So if one child is harder to parent than the other one, I mean, there's a way to say, but he has so many great attributes, and lift him up anyway, but what we tend to do is also, he's the problem, and the other one is so good. So It's a challenge, I know, but it really comes down to, I challenge people all the time just to be the best coach. Be the best coach you can be. Coach your kids, coach each other, and do it from a position of love. And it looks different than, and I think you all said something about being parented differently. Don't parent like you were parented.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to say, I heard Arnie early before I got off. I got the same thing. My dad never said he loved me. My mom's 94. She still struggles with showing that because it's a generational thing. He didn't know. He didn't know how to give it. But I find that I'm somewhat emotionally disconnected. Even though I say I love my kids ad nauseum, I still find myself a little emotionally disconnected because of my disconnect with my dad. So even though you can say you love them, you really got to work at the emotional connectivity as a dad. Generally speaking, we got to find ways to talk to our kids in ways that make us uncomfortable because we're not comfortable in that environment with others. So anyway, it's 9:10. We stayed late. Any feedback, questions? So next week's the big one. We're going to start talking about your family values and your family mission statement. So we have 2 weeks. We have this week and the following week to actually put that together, but it's a lot of work. I can warn you right now. I hope you guys will put the work into it. I would schedule a couple of 2-hour blocks if you can. Take some dates or whatever you need to do. But I don't think you can do anything better than to get this down in writing and be able to start monitoring and managing your family around your values. And has anybody ever done anything like this corporately?
No.
Corporately.
Okay.
Yeah, corporately, but it's reminding me of conversations we've had with our social worker during the adoption process.
The home study.
Yeah, during the home study and everything. I feel like a lot of that is a pretty decent foundation because they asked like, why do you want children or why do you want to adopt? And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of that's probably fairly pertinent.
Yeah. And I've
And
had,
we do have a little mini one sort of posted on the wall that we made with the kids and walked through.
I've had a couple of couples, and I don't want to raise the bar for you too high, but get really creative with like taking the letters of their last name, and Knickerbocker would be way too
I
long.
was gonna say we're not doing that. It's 13 letters.
But
He wanted me to hyphenate my name when
Yeah.
I was in grad school and writing my thesis. He's like, just call yourself Upschulte hyphen
Yeah.
Knickerbocker. I was like, that's 27 letters.
I was begging for her to hyphenate.
well, this might not work for the Knickerbockers, but just took a letter of each. They added a value to each letter, and then they posted it so it was easy for the kids to remember. And it was teaching them to spell their name at the same time. So it was kind of like, that was really unique. That was pretty cool. One couple actually wrote a poem. They were trying to make it so it was like Dr. Seuss, like, oops, I guess I shouldn't say that. They were making it like something simple that the kids could actually have fun with early and not wait until they're graduate students to get it,
Yeah.
So for whatever it is, just make it fun, but meaningful so that your family can kind of start rallying around it early. But it does take some time. So I'll just warn you.
I think it's good to involve the kids though, even if we have like a framework here. And I feel the same way about discipline, which we haven't really worked a ton with involving them on, but I think that could be part of our mission, because I think if they're a part of like creating the structure and framework, they're more likely to follow it, whether it's positive or punitive.
I tell you what, I did it. My kids were a little older, probably right around preteen, but a little, maybe 10. But I included them in punishments for everything. So I said, look, this is a trend. You're not cleaning your room. What should be the punishment? And every single time they made their punishment worse than I would have.
Exactly.
So then I would say, golly, I hate this. I have to punish you, but I have to implement your punishment. This is killing me. But you said that it should be this. And they're like, I'm like, I don't want to do it, but here we go. This is what you said.
But I respect you. So
It was,
I've used that.
Yeah.
What do you think the consequence should be?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, there's got to be a consequence, and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was the crazy one. I would write contracts all the time with my kids. So I would actually write them out and I'd make them sign it. So if they say, I didn't say that, I'd be like, oh, here's the contract. You know, if you guys need any contracts, if your kids get older, I have a driving contract, I have a dating contract, I have consequences.
You should write a book, publish them.
I stole it from everybody. I mean, anytime I heard a great idea, I would just put it in my arsenal. And
Nice.
you should have seen the guys that came over to date my daughters. And I told them no age limit to my daughters, but the guy had to come over and he had to go through a process with me and sign a contract. And I tell you what, there was only a couple. There was only like 5 guys strong enough and with 2 girls to actually come and have that conversation.
Nice.
And the coolest thing was at 22, my daughter asked me, do I still have to do that? And I said, yeah, even more so now. And the last guy was her husband. So,
Nice.
and he wasn't a believer. And I still let him date her. And he got saved 10 days later. So
Wow.
because all we did is talk about Jesus instead of my daughter. So, anyway. All right. Well, we went way over. I appreciate you guys staying, and I hope this was a good session. Spend some time in the next week getting started at least, so we have something to talk about next week about your family values. Who wants to pray us out? What guy?
I'll do it.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Lord, for this this time tonight where we could just gather, Father, and seek you and to share our experiences with parenting, Father. And we pray that you just help us to implement these things, Father, to be intentional and to show love and respect and just to do things as you would have us do them. And bless us all throughout this week. In Jesus' name, amen.
Man, thank you so much. All right, guys, have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
all right, man.
Bye, guys.
Bye.